Welcome everybody back to Teaching Tuesday. I'm very excited tonight. You guys had to hear me the last couple of weeks, and Nicheole is back from overseas travel, doing what she does. So I'm excited to have her back and excited to listen to her. For those of you that have been here before, welcome back. A lot of you have, and there's a couple of new people, obviously. So just a little bit of an intro. So this whole program started, well, let me back up. So 25 plus years ago, Nicheole Amundsen started buying real estate and has been doing so for 25 plus years, has been incredibly successful, thousands of units across the United States. And about 11 years ago, she decided to give back and started to teach. So when she was teaching, she would do a 4-day class. And I had done some flips and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. It just seemed like way too much work. And I wanted something passive. And somebody told me, hey, you should go talk to this woman, Nicheole Amundsen. So I did. And there's other parts of that story, but I ended up taking her 4-day class or intensive class. And it was unbelievable. I mean, just incredible class. You did walk out a little bit like you've been fed with a fire hose because it's a lot of information. And I still have my, I've always tell people I still have my manual, which is literally like 6 or 7 inches thick. So anyway, so she was teaching that, phenomenal. We got along really well. We started partnering on some stuff a couple of years before COVID, or maybe the year before COVID. We decided, you know, let's put this online. We did not know COVID was coming, obviously, but let's take it online. And I always try to tell people, or like to tell people, that even though it was such an enormous amount of information, right? Basically, with the bonuses on the front and the back, almost 10 or 12 hours a day for 4 days. And basically the whole course was rebuilt from scratch. And Nicole's comment was, oh, good, because I'll never have enough time to teach everything I want to in those 4 days, which to me was astonishing because it's just, there's so much information. So put that together, huge success. People really like it. And then this started, Teaching Tuesday started about a year ago, I guess a year and a month now. I think it's been like 13 months that we've been doing it. Just as an opportunity to do 2 things, really. One is to give people a taste of learning something about multifamily, and then being able to make a decision as to, wow, you know, something, this looks really good, it's interesting, these guys know what they're talking about. I think I'll try their course, right? And they go and they sign up for it. It's like $2,000. There's a money back guarantee, the whole 9 yards, whatever it is. But at least you're not going in blind, right? So people see this, makes sense. There's a system. Let me follow the system. So they sign up. So that's gone really well. And now we're actually doing, in the beginning of March, we're doing the first live class since pre-COVID. So it's been 4 or 5 years since we did the last live class. It's going to be 4 days, the beginning of March, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right in Baltimore at the Best Western Conference Center. So if you have not been involved in multifamily before, or you have and you want to get what I think is better teaching, or more teaching, we'll list everything at the end. I highly encourage you to take advantage of this. I don't know if we're ever going to do this again, but that's kind of my pitch, if you will. So having said that, I'm going to turn this over to Nicheole.
All right, so James, I don't think I fixed the slide that you fixed on the last one, the last one.
Okay. You mean at the very end?
Yeah. So when I get about to there, can you have that slide ready to go, and I'll stop share, and then you can bring it up and share that part?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So thank you. So we're talking today about master lease options. And I guess my first question is, just by kind of a show of hands, how many of you know what a master lease option is? Just raise your hand if you know what it is. Or yell out. So Freddie knows what it is, and Dan does.
And Wayne.
And Aisha. Okay. All right. So we don't need to maybe spend, is there anybody who doesn't know what it is?
I don't know. This is Ashok.
Okay. So we'll do a little bit of explanation then. So, but that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm going to be focusing it on on multifamily properties, apartments and mobile home parks primarily. Although you can certainly do master lease options in residential. They just sometimes call them something different. So let's kind of just start what it is. This is what we're going to try and cover today. What is it? Who's going to go for it? We're going to have to negotiate that a lot of times. Why would we do it? And then kind of what we should be aware of, and then some of the landmines a little bit we need to pay attention to. So, so basically, what it is in the title. It's a lease, and there's an option attached to it. So the only thing that is really different is the word master in front of that. And whenever you see something that's a master lease, typically what that means is that whoever's taking it over is going to be responsible for everything. So that means that we are responsible for all of the bills. We're paying the taxes, the mortgage, the insurance, all of the repairs and maintenance. So all of that is removed from the seller. So it's a lease, so we're renting it, but it's a master lease. And so the other thing that master leases tend to mean in commercial is that most commercial properties have more than one door, so to speak. And so when we're doing something on a master lease, we're taking on all of the doors. So we're taking on all of the apartments or all of the mobile homes, right? And we are renting it. But we're going to associate that with an option to buy it. In residential, we're typically told that you have two documents. You have a lease document and you have an option document a lot of times. In commercial, I would be linking them. I would be having one contract. It has the lease and it has the option agreements. So when we have an option to buy, that means we have the right, but we don't have the obligation. So we're not required under a contract, as opposed to a lease purchase agreement, which is a lease that is associated with a purchase and sale agreement. So in a lease purchase, you actually have the obligation to buy. Now, I hear people using the same terms for both, and they're actually not the same. And it's fairly important to understand the difference. So in commercial or in the multifamily space, a lot of times when you are leasing something, it's just a rental agreement. And what are you going to pay as a lease? And then the option part of that has typically some kind of a payment associated to secure the option. So you can think of it, it's not a down payment, but you can think of it as a payment. Most of the time, that payment is not, you can't get it back like you can sometimes with a lease. So instead of me wanting to give the seller a lot of times an option payment, what I want to do in my contract is to agree that I'm going to put a certain amount of money or I'm going to do certain things to the property. That way, it, if I don't exercise the option, the seller gets the property back in better shape. And if I do exercise the option, I have put money into that property that I'm going to reap the benefits for. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So I think I just talked about there, most of the time, although not always, you can think of a lease in residential as you're paying the owner a certain amount of money, and they're paying all the bills, and they have a certain amount left over that goes in their pocket. Most of the time in master leases, if you're going to give the owner anything, it's going to be a small amount. In commercial, most of the time, the people who are going to do master leases are for the properties that are in a lot of trouble, and so they are running break even or negative, which means most of the time I'm not paying them anything. And so I think we talked about the need to upgrade. So let's talk for a minute about who would go for it. As I alluded to kind of in the last slide, the property generally isn't in good shape. So the people who are going to do master leases are sellers who have a property that is running negative and isn't well run. Typically, there are management issues and or there are also physical issues with the properties. So they tend to be, again, the people who are likely to do this. Let me kind of back up for just a sec. So if you have a kind of a mental picture in your mind of what this property looks like, for the owner to sell this, and a lot of times that's what they want to do, the person who's going to buy it needs to be able to get financing. A lot of these properties are in really pretty bad shape. And so financing is going to be hard to come by, particularly traditional financing. So the people who buy these properties that are really in a world of hurt are people like us who can raise the entire amount of money and just buy the property, or who can take it over on things like a master lease. They can be behind in payments. If they're behind in payments, in the residential world, a lot of times you just catch those payments up and you don't work with the lender. You keep the lender somewhat in the dark of what you're doing. In commercial, I don't think that's a good idea. You need to make sure that the lender is aware of what we're doing. Okay. So most of the time, so in this next bullet, I've done probably half a dozen master leases over the years. And these are some of the things in this bullets that you tend to see, or that I have seen in the ones that I have been aware of. And I don't think we need to have a lot of discussion about any of these specifically. They're pretty all self-explanatory. The behind in mortgage and fines, etc., you're going to be paying that money to the county, or you're going to be paying the money to the lender, rather than putting the money into the property itself. Okay, let's talk about the next one here. All right. So when we are looking to for the possibility of taking over something on a master lease, we really need to find out as much as we can about this property. Sometimes there are brokers involved, but a lot of times there's not. because brokers pretty much know that it's going to be hard to get this sold. And or there is no money. If they sell it, there isn't enough money for them to get their commission. And so as often as not, you see these as FSBOs, for sale by owners, or you'll see them listed kind of there's a listing, but it may not be getting a lot of traction. The broker's not pushing it a lot. If there is a broker involved, they are part of this discussion. I don't go around brokers. Don't go around realtors. That's a way to sort of get yourself in a lot of trouble in this industry, particularly in the multifamily world, because people know everybody, people know each other. And so you need to be kind of upfront about what we're trying to do here. You have to understand what the seller needs, not what they want, just like any distressed property. When I'm negotiating or when I'm talking to people about these, I really just want to understand what the situation is. And I can't do that a lot of times if there's a broker involved with just me and the broker. I need to be able to have a discussion with the seller as well. What I'm trying to find out is their point of pain, what's keeping them up at night. So in the 4-day class that's upcoming, we're actually going to talk a fair amount about negotiating, and we're going to do a negotiation exercise because it is such an important part of being able to get deals. I'm sure those of you who've been around this business for a while have never met anybody, and I'm saying this sarcastically with a smile on my face, have never met anybody who has to prove that they're the alpha male in the group and that they're going to win and everybody else is going to lose. That doesn't work very well in this business. We need to be able to get people what they need and still come out ahead for us. So it can still be a win for us. But if we go into this with a win-lose mentality, where we're going to get absolutely the best deal we can and to heck with anybody else, you're not going to get very many deals. And that's also true here. What we're trying to do is build rapport, build empathy, build some kind of trust where the owner thinks that maybe we can actually solve their problem for them, which means that we need to work kind of in partnership with them, although that's probably the wrong word. But master leases, we are going to be, because we are probably not going to exercise the option for at least 3 to 5 years, we are going to be involved with this owner for 3 to 5 years. And we need to have a reasonable ability to have a relationship with them. Okay, so I think those are the main things I wanted to say with that slide. Why would we do it? For me, now, people who are starting out in this, in the commercial real estate world, like it a lot of times because you don't have to have a lot of cash to get into the deal. You kind of getting in relatively light. That's something we're going to talk about in the beware here in a couple of minutes. But because a lot of these problems, these properties have problems, it's going to take you're going to have some capital available. We can't fix this most of the time just by hard work. If you can find a property whose main issues are mismanagement, maybe you can fix that. But most of the time there's other things involved as well with these. And so you get in light, but you have to have some capital there to be able to take care of issues and get the property begun to turn around. When you're first investing and you don't have a lot of your of income coming in, shall we say, from properties, what James and I try and talk to people about is a need to focus on cash flow to begin with. You need to have enough income coming in after all the bills are paid that you can put a little bit in your pocket. That's how you begin to be able to have enough money to quit your job and stuff. And so these properties are not cash flow properties to begin with. The reason I like them and a lot of people like them is because you can get in light, which means down the road they are great for cash on cash return. So down the road, after you fix these problems in 3 to 5 years, you make 50, 75, 100% return on your money every year. But it's going to take a few years to do that. So I'm not trying to tell people who are brand new investors that they shouldn't do a deal like this. What I am telling you is that you need to be aware that it's going to be 3 to 5 years probably before you have much cash flow, if any. And that you have to have some capital in reserve. And third, you have to be prepared that this is going to be a fair amount of work because the property is in distress most of the time. And it's going to take time and effort from you and your management company to get this turned around. The other things I like about them is that when somebody needs to sell as opposed to wants to sell, they're much more focused on having a deal come about. So they're a lot of times easier to deal with. If you're dealing the other bullet, that last bullet down there on that first one where you don't have to meet SEC rules, if I am leasing something, most of the time I don't have to have a syndication put together. These are initially risky enough that I would think 2 or 3 times about bringing passive investors in, unless they really know what they're doing. Now, these are great for joint venture deals where everybody gets to put in a little money and do some work on this. But if you are focusing on the lease and not on having to raise a lot of money through syndications, you may not have to meet the SEC rules and requirements, which makes it a lot easier to get into these deals. We do have to be real clear on how much money we're going to need. And we probably need to have firm commitments for money or have money already available, since a lot of times these people are up against, these owners are up against some pretty hefty deadlines and they really need to close. So these aren't the properties where we are going to kind of get them under LOI and take our time doing a contract and raising money and stuff. These deals run a little bit faster a lot of times. And you probably need to already have some money in an account or have firm commitments. All right, we just talked about the joint ventures there. All right. All right. So here are, I think this is the things to be aware of. It's an option and not a sale. So you don't have the deed to this property. All right. That has a couple of ramifications to it. Even if you have a lease with an option agreement, sellers can go around you sometimes and sell the property if you haven't made sure that you have filed a mortgage to secure the option in the records, in the land records. All that is. And so a lot of times you don't file leases in the land records, but anytime, whether it residential or commercial property, if you are doing a option to buy and you are having to put up time and money, you need to get a mortgage put together, and the mortgage is not to secure the loan in this case, the mortgage to secure the option. Does that make sense to people? Nod your head maybe if it does. Okay. So by all means necessary, make sure that you would file a mortgage to secure the option, whether this be a multifamily or a single family property. Because you don't have the deed, you have control theoretically, but there's been a number of cases where people go around people. The other thing to be aware of is that in terms of, because you don't have the deed, that theoretically the tax benefits go to the owner and not to you. Now, you can deal with that in your contract and probably should, right? That if you're paying all of the bills, then you should get the tax benefits. And in the first few years, that may be depreciation, or it may be able to write off a lot of things. But if you don't have that in your contract, then all of your losses and all of your expenses can be tricky to claim on taxes. So we still need to do our due diligence, particularly regarding the issues that you have learned from the seller. And it's still a case of buyer beware, or in this case, leasee beware, that you have done enough homework to know that you don't have other alligators in your lake, so to speak, that are going to come bite you up because you haven't learned everything you need to. So you still need to do a fair amount of due diligence, and that's going to include, land records. It's going to include, with the city and the county, with police and fire, with insurance, with taxes. So you kind of know what you're getting into. Now, we don't have to do that 26-page due diligence checklist, but you need to identify the risk areas and make sure that you are knowing what you're getting into. All right. You do need to make sure you get copies of the mortgage documents if the seller, or if the owner has a mortgage. Because as we all know, in commercial real estate, it may be a fixed rate, but those mortgages balloon. And so you need to know what those mortgage documents say, and you need to read them. There can be a lot of hidden issues in those deals. What are the terms of the loan? When is it going to need to, when is it going to balloon? When are you going to need to refinance it? Those kinds of things. You also need to do a full underwriting on this. And another thing that we're going to do in this 4-day class that was coming up is that we are going to spend the better part of a day just teaching you how to underwrite deals. It is really important to get the numbers right and to figure out not only the is it a buy, but what are you going to do to turn that around, and how can you put numbers to those actions that you're going to take. All right. So we really need to get clear underwriting. All right. And so this is just kind of my summary of things to kind of be aware of. Make sure you do your due diligence. What is the seller not selling? You need to get real clear on the monies that you're going to have to bring in. And once you do that, add 20%. Because there's always extra costs that you weren't aware of, and you need a little buffer just in case. You really need to get a good local attorney. So we have kind of national real estate attorneys, but every city or state where we're buying a property, we're going to find a local real estate attorney. They have a tendency to know what's going on. They know what the rules are. They can guide you a lot of ways. And you really do need an attorney to do this. You need to be a little bit careful about what you share with the seller about how you're going to fix all of this, because then they may turn around and figure out that they don't need you. We still share, but I'm not sure that I'm going to share everything I know with them. All right, so this next one is one I have been bitten by a couple of times. If you keep the staff, if there are staff, and you keep them, their loyalty a lot of times is to the owner, and they think of you as just renting the property, and it's hard to sometimes actually manage that way. A lot of times, because we're dealing with 3 to 5 years here, and I need to have a relationship with the seller that entire time. And once they see the property starting to turn around, they can get kind of antsy, and why should I sell this to you? Why should I, keep the option that we agreed on then? Because look at how well it's doing. And so a lot of times what I will do in my option contract is say, when I go to cash them out. Now understand, to begin with, I have a lease and I have an option. When I go to exercise the option, I am going to do a purchase and sale agreement. My option agreement, a lot of times, will say in it, if the property is doing this and this by the time I'm getting ready to purchase it and I exercise the option, we will give you 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 on exit. That helps them to feel like they are not just losing in the end, but it needs to be reasonable. And that's another reason you really want to underwrite this correctly. Okay. Having said all of that, I don't want you to leave thinking I don't think master lease options are wonderful, because I think they are a great way to take over properties and to make a boatload of money down the road. You just have to know it's going to take 3 to 5 years. So I actually have a property, wasn't a master lease. Well, I do have one that's a master lease. It's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And at this point, it's making 90 to 100% of my cash on cash return every year. So every year, so if I put in a certain amount of dollars on this property when I bought it, I'm getting that back now every year plus. And so I have just a huge amount of return on this. But it takes a while to get there. I like master leases. I just have to be careful to know what I'm getting into and to figure out what that deal is going to look like. And I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it back over to James to take on this last slide or so, and then we'll take questions.
Nicheole, I was actually going to say, if you can you look at the last slide on there, because I looked at it on Dropbox and it looks like it's actually fixed on your presentation.
Oh, do you want me to pull it up again?
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's just see.
Okay.
Oh, nope. Okay, I'll pull it up.
I really thought that I had forgotten to fix it.
You're on mute, James. You're still on mute.
He's trying to find the slide, I think. Can
No,
you
but I
talk,
think
James?
he's talking.
Yeah, sorry. So I thought I had fixed it on your deck. So but because I know it's fixed there, but I'll get it. I'll put it up in just a second. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to jump in. You can just unmute. I think we've got like 25 people, so it's a small enough crowd.
All right, well, while he's trying to find it, please ask any of the questions you want to ask about master
Hey,
leases or anything else.
hey, Nicole. This is Henry. How you doing?
Hey, Henry, how are you?
I'm great. Hey, I have a quick question. You said that if you want to exercise the option to buy in 3 to 5 years, it is wise to put a number that is, I would say maybe enticing. I don't know if you said enticing or a good amount, so that the seller feels like they're, finishing something in a good way and getting a good amount of money down when you're completing this. Is that what you said, or is that something we can do so that it
Okay,
works for everybody?
it's a good question. What I'm sort of saying is that if the property, if in 3 to 5 years I've really been able to turn that property around, that my option agreement will say, if I have been able to turn this around, I will give you $50,000 at close when we actually close on the property and buy it, that you will get money on the back end. Since most of the time when I'm going in on the front end, the property's in bad shape and I am not putting money into their pocket to take over their problems. I'm just taking over their problems. And so what I want them to be able to see is that if they continue to work with me and to be cooperative on the back end, they're going to get some money. But I'm going to also say that's only if the property's doing a certain, doing reasonably well. And how much I can give them really depends on my underwriting and what my exits look like. Does that more clear now?
Yes, yes. I was going to ask if there's a percentage, like let's say the property is 1 million, do you do 10%, which is 100,000, or 5%, which is 50,000? If it's 10 million, 10% would be like 1 million.
Yeah,
Or
I
like,
don't use percents most of the time. I look at my underwriting numbers. So, because so, um, when I look at exits on my underwriting spreadsheets, I'm looking to see, one of the things that I really don't want to do is have to bring in more money at closing, right? I want the property to be worth enough that I can just get a loan and not have to come to closing with money. And so part of my thinking when I put in how much I'm going to give the seller at closing really depends on what my exit numbers look like. A lot of times it's somewhere around $40,000-$50,000 a lot of times. It's enough to make people feel like they are getting something. But truthfully, I don't have a percent. I'm going to let the exits tell me what I can do comfortably. So I am not promising something I can't deliver.
Thank you so much. That's very clear. Yeah.
All right, James.
So can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So, the QR code works as well. If you're going to type it in, obviously it's just passivecashflowforlife.com/events. And then obviously www at the front for some reason. I don't know why, but you have to put that up there. So it's 4 days. It's March 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. It's at the Best Western Conference Center. It is not in downtown Baltimore. Somebody asked me that the other day. They were scared to drive down there because they don't like traffic. It's actually right off of, I think it's 895. It's like one exit. You can actually see it from the highway. So it's very close, lots of parking, that kind of thing. And we'll probably start, I think, I guess we'll start probably like at 7:30, and then we'll let everybody in. And then at 8 we'll start, and we'll run till 5:30, 6:30, something like that. And we'll run obviously for 4 days. So that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know, I don't know
I
what to
need
tell you
all the
guys.
time I can get. What do you want me to tell you?
And for the really interested people, we're going to go the entire next Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 or not. Really, I don't, I take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm not the most objective person in the world, but in relevance to this, but this is just it's amazing. Um, so let me give you one example of something that actually happened today. So it puts you in the game, if you will, because you're starting to actually know and learn how to talk to brokers and sellers and property management companies and stuff like that. And when you're in the game, now that we're in this incredible next, 12 to 24 months, when a lot of these properties are getting into trouble and there's going to be a lot of bargains out. Literally today, somebody that came to our live meetup in Hanover last month sent me a deal for a really nice building right here in Maryland. Not huge, but not small. I want to say it's 48 units, 49 units, something like that. And the bank owns the building and they're selling it. So you saw that like back in 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Or whatever it is, or maybe even in some other areas like, Nicheole has got some great relationships with banks and stuff like that. But they're in the offering memorandum, it says owned by bank, and it's a nice building, right? And they're selling it at a huge discount. But you don't get those kind of deals unless you're actually, kind of in the community, if you will. So, Nicheole has talked about this quite a bit, over the last year or so. Other people have talked about it as well over these next 2 years. It's going to be phenomenal. I've already seen some stuff like this, but it's just funny that literally today, somebody sent me this incredible deal right here in Maryland that I wouldn't have known about unless I was kind of part of the community. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. And I think Jose had a question. He had his hand up, I think, somewhere.
I think there was
Yeah.
a comment about how much was it?
Oh, it's 1997, $2,000 basically. You can pay for it all at once. You can pay for it over 3 months, which I think is $747 each time. As cheesy as it sounds, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody. We've never had anybody ask for it, but if for some reason something changed in your life, you decide that you've won the lotto and you want your money back or something else, send me an email. It'll be back in your account in 24 hours. So we're not trying to take advantage of anybody.
We may need to talk about that a little bit, because that money back 30-day money back guarantee was for the
Oh, right.
online course.
Yep. Good point. All right.
And so I would say to that, that because what you are also getting with this 4-day face-to-face class is the online class for free, which has about 60 hours of materials. So I will say that if you come to the first full day of the 4-day class and feel like it's not worth it, we will refund your money after that first day. So it's not, if you're coming to the 4-day class, I'm going to be a pill and say you can't come to the 4-day class and then say you want your money back. Right? Does that make
But
sense, James, to you?
no,
Does that sound
that's actually very generous. So that makes total sense. So I've actually heard, it's not usual to hear something like that. Usually the times I have heard is like, if you come to me by lunch on the first day, kind of thing. So that's very generous. So yeah, if you show up on the first day and it's not what you want, absolutely. I'm totally on board with that. That makes sense to me.
Okay, anything else that you want to talk about? Are we back to questions? What are we?
I'm trying to find the chat. Let's see.
Hey James, can I chime in?
Yeah, please.
Hey, so like 2017, I think we met Nicheole and James. We did take the class. We were brand new. We ventured off into residential. Kind of kicking myself nowadays, but residential's been good, but we're super excited that Nicole's teaching. Because she certainly doesn't have to, and sometimes you got to jump on those opportunities when uh, people is knowledgeable and have been doing this for a long time teach these classes because you don't know. I mean, it takes a lot to teach this 4-day class for 10, 11, 12 hours. So you might not always get those opportunities. And these last couple of years, we've kind of learned to say yes to a lot of things that come down, because you're like, next time, I'll do it next year. Well, next year might not come. She might not decide that she wants to teach it next year, or, COVID happens or whatever. So, we're pretty much say yes to stuff, get it done. And this could be a life changer for you guys.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
We've also
absolutely.
had a couple of people who've met business partners in the class.
Mhm.
So if you are looking to find other people, like-minded people, it's a great place to network and get to know other people in the space.
And we'll have some local students that have been very successful in the class, guys that live in Maryland, kind of thing. So like Alex and Sam and Steve, and I think there's a couple of others that are saying they're going to drop by as well. So you get a chance to kind of, I guess, get a real-time testimonial, if you will.
All right, let's turn it back over to questions, unless you have something else, James.
No, actually, I did have a question on, and I don't know if it was clear to everybody to,
Can you stop sharing the screen, or unless
yep.
you have?
Nope, I can stop that.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. So I guess when you mentioned that if you do a master lease, you don't have to do a syndication. I don't know if everyone caught that. Can you kind of go over that in a little more detail?
Yeah. So if you're going to raise a lot of private money to buy big properties, most of the time people are giving you their money in a passive way. So they're going to be the limited partner, so to speak. And you're going to be making all of the decisions. You and your other general partners, the management team. What the Supreme Court said back in the 30s is that if you are making all of the decisions for somebody on the use of their money, that it is a security and it has to be treated like a security. Security meaning that you have to have a license to sell them, or you have to be using one of the exclusions that the SEC has written about. And the exclusions typically are different kinds of syndications or ways of raising money. And you have to meet SEC requirements. You have to have an SEC attorney. There's a lot of work to that. but it's the easiest way to raise money, but it takes time to do that. And so if you're doing a master lease and you're not having to go after big amounts of private money, then you can probably get away. You don't have to meet the SEC requirements, at least while you're under this lease with an option. Now, if you have to go raise money to put money into for the option or for the master lease, I'm not saying you never have to meet SEC requirements. It depends on who you're raising money from and what you're going to do with that money, right? But we'll talk about that in that class too. But generally, you don't have to do that right away. When you go to get a final close on this, you may well have to do this when you exercise the option.
And then someone sent me a private message asking, what size deal do you recommend someone new to the business start with?
Why don't you go ahead and answer that?
So I guess it really depends on your comfort zone. I mean, I know, everyone throws around these big numbers and, big is relative, right? So, 40, 50, 100, 150 or whatever it may be. Here, listen to a lot of these podcasts and, they're buying these enormous properties under syndication. Nicheole has always taught me, and she continues to teach everybody else that, something, she didn't start big. She started with some duplexes, right? So maybe you want to start there. Maybe you want to start with a 5 unit or a 10 unit or a 50. It really just depends on what your comfort level is. And maybe not start in a primary market. So maybe don't start like in downtown DC or something like that. Maybe you want to start in a secondary or a tertiary market like Hagerstown, Frederick, York. I'm trying to think of places south, Richmond, Petersburg, Colonial Beach, markets that, and you have to do your own due diligence on those markets, by the way. But markets don't have to be like these huge markets and emerging right now. As long as they're stable, we've had great success in markets that are just continue to be stable because, Nicheole has always taught buy right, and if you buy it right, you don't have to be in an emerging market. You'll make money faster, but it doesn't mean you have to be in there because if you go into an emerging market, there's also a lot more competition, so you'll pay more. So it's kind of 6 of one, half of the other. But I think you have to go whatever comfort zone or whatever level of comfort you are. Start with a 4-plex, start with a 10-plex, whatever it is you want to do, and then kind of grow from there, right? I sat down with a couple of guys that are actually coming to the class to sit down and kind of strategize with them over their goals. And one guy wants to have 100 units in 3 years. And I'm like, something that's totally doable. What do you want to start with? He says, well, I want to start with something small. So he'll start with like, an 8, 9, 10 unit local, right? He lives in Woodbridge. So he'll start with something local. And then, maybe the second half of the year or next year, he'll buy like a 20 or 30 unit. And then year 3, he'll buy something bigger. So it's not like you have to start here. You start small and kind of grow along the way. And you can grow to whatever level you want. You don't have to grow to 6,000 units. You can grow to 600. You can grow to 16. You can grow to whatever level you want. The option is there for you as long as you learn how to do it right. So anything you would add, Nicheole?
No, I think that was great. I think we have time for probably one more question and then we need to turn it over to our partners.
Yes.
I have a quick question, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So you say you have some great experience with this, Nicheole. Have you had a situation where you created like an exit strategy where, you choose not to basically purchase the property? Could you say something about that, or also like the auction to be sold or assigning to another party? Is that something you can say? Something about that?
Okay, I'm not sure I'm quite getting the gist. Are you saying that have I taken on properties and then like a master lease and then chosen not to exercise the option?
Right. Is that something like when you are creating like your exit strategy, when you're negotiating your
I have never actually had a case where I didn't exercise the option once I actually had a master lease option in place, but you are totally free to do that. I certainly have had a number of properties that I have had under contract and I have 30 days. That's kind of a get out of jail free card if I don't want it. And I've walked away from several. So I probably walk away after I have a contract of 1 in 3, because I find something on due diligence that I wasn't expecting, or I can't make the numbers work, or there's something else the issue. Um, so that was part of it. And then you seem to be asking something about wholesaling. I'm not sure I understood that part of your question.
Yeah, like yeah, I got that. And the other part of the question that I was kind of like thinking of was um the auction to sell, right? Or assign it to another.
Oh, okay. You can sell an option. You can sell an option to somebody.
Mhm.
So you can wholesale anything,
Mhm.
any contract. You can wholesale an option to buy a car. You can wholesale so you can certainly sell the option to somebody else. What I would be careful with is because in my case, let's say, or in your case, you have negotiated with the seller that you are going to do certain things. And you have been talking to the lender about that you're going to walk in and do certain things so that you're not having people in the dark. So if you are going to sell the option ethically and morally, I think you have a need to make sure the person you're selling the option to is somebody who can execute on your plan and who will execute on your plan, so you don't leave the seller in a worse place and a lender in a worse place. But that is, so you can sell an option for sure. For me, I have some ethical responsibility to the people I've negotiated with to not leave them in a worse position than they started, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it. I run over a couple of minutes, and so I'm going to turn it back to James to introduce Jane and Sharon. And thank you everybody for coming. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.